So this video is going to be about scales, and by the end of the video you should be able to write major and minor scales. So first, what is a scale? A scale is a collection of notes arranged in a particular order. So for instance, if I were to draw an analogy to shapes, you might have like a bunch of shapes, right? Here's a circle, a triangle, a square, and I could arrange those in a number of different ways, right? I could do like circle, then triangle, then square, or I could do square, then circle, then triangle, and those are all different orderings. So a scale is a bunch of notes arranged in a particular order. And you probably already know that there are two modes of scales that we most commonly encounter in Western music. So those two modes are major and minor. And you further probably know that the minor scale has kind of three variants: natural minor, harmonic minor, and melodic minor. We're only going to be concerned for right now with natural minor. So in this video, I'm going to just say major and minor. And if you already know what natural minor is, that's the flavor we're concerned with. If you don't worry about the other two for now. So major and minor scales. Just before we get to constructing scales, let's take a quick look at the keyboard. If you aren't familiar with how to read a keyboard, you should check out pages 1 to 4 in your textbook. But let's just review what a half and a whole step is. So on the keyboard, a half step is the distance between any two adjacent keys, so any two keys that are side by side, right? So for instance, that might be the distance from the distance from C right here to C sharp right here. So there's no keys in between them, right? So that's a half step. Or it might be the distance from this E right here to this F right here. Again, no keys between them, so they're a half step. Okay, so I've got that written down here. A half step right here is the distance from one key to any adjacent key on the keyboard. A whole step, on the other hand, is the distance from one key to another key on the keyboard where there's one key between them. Okay. So it's kind of like two half steps put together, right? So C to C sharp is a half step, and C sharp to D is a half step. If you put those two together, you get a whole step. And so if we take a look, C all the way to D, there's one key in between C and D, that's C sharp, so that's a whole step, right? So similarly, this E flat here to this F here would be a whole step because there's one key in between them, this E, right? Okay, so that's half steps and whole steps. That's useful for scales because I was saying before that a scale is a collection of notes arranged in a particular order, and the ordering is determined by intervals, these steps, right? So it's determined by a particular ordering of half steps and whole steps. For major scales, that ordering is the following: whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. Okay, so if you follow that ordering of steps, no matter what note you start on, you'll end up with a major scale. Okay, so let's try constructing one. Let's do one in the treble clef. So I'll draw my treble clef here. Okay, we're going to do an F major scale. F major. Okay, so the first step here, I've outlined the steps below down here. Step 1 is write the notes on the staff beginning and ending on the letter name of the scale. So in this case, our scale is F, so I'm going to start on F, and I'm just going to write all the way up the staff. F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F. Okay, so I've got my notes there. Then the second step is to add accidentals to the scale, starting from the bottom and working upward, and follow that pattern of whole and half steps that I wrote just below my staff. Okay, so we're going to start with F to G. We want to know, is that a whole step? Because that's what it should be, right? That's what we're doing right here, this whole step. So we can scroll up to our piano keyboard and check out, is F to G a whole step? Okay, so here's our F. Here's our G, and there's one key in between them, so that means it's a whole step, so we're good there. I'm just going to label that with a square bracket like this. Okay, so that indicates whole step, that square bracket, and I'll even write just a little W to remind myself. Okay, then for G to A, we also need a whole step. So I'm going to go up to the keyboard again, I'll write A here. So here's G to A, and indeed there's one key between them, so that's also a whole step. So I'll go ahead and label that with a square bracket as well. Okay, then the next one needs to be a half step. Okay, so I've got a B written right now, so here's my B. And so if I take a look at the keyboard here, let me scroll up a little bit further. There we go. A to B, okay, there's one key between them, so it's a whole step, but I needed it to be a half step. So that means I'm going to have to do something to one of those two notes. Now let's just go back down here for a second. I have basically two options. I could raise this A by a half step, right, in order to make it so that there's a half step. So I could take this A and I could raise it to the black key up here, right, and then there would be a half step between A sharp and B. Or I could take the B and lower it by a half step, and then there would be a half step between B flat and A, right? If I change the A though, right, here's our A in the scale. If I change the A, that's going to change the distance between the G and the A. So I don't want to mess with that A, I only want to mess with the B, okay? So I'm going to lower the B to B flat, and that's going to give me my whole step between A and B, okay? And I'm going to mark that with a little, I don't know what to call that, a little swoopy thing, okay? A little V. And mark that H. So there's my half step. Okay, the next note I need is C, okay, and so I have a B flat, so I'm going from this black key here, this B flat, to this C over here, okay, and there's one key in between B flat and C, that's B, so that is a whole step, so I'm good there. Okay, and then as you're writing the scale, you would continue following that logic, right? I'm going to just speed this up a little bit and not go through the whole scale. So C to D, that is a whole step. D to E is a whole step. And E to F is a half step. Okay, so we follow the pattern whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. Okay, so any note that you start on, as long as you follow that pattern, you'll end up with a major scale. Okay. How about the minor scale? There are a couple ways that we can construct a minor scale. The way that I'm going to show you is first by constructing a major scale. Okay, so we're going to do the F minor scale down here. F minor scale. Okay, so the first step, I've got the steps again outlined below here. The first step is to write the major scale that corresponds to the letter name of the requested minor scale. So I requested F minor here, so I'm going to write an F major scale. That's going to be my starting point. Okay, so we'll do this in treble clef again. And I'm just going to copy the F major scale that we wrote above. F, G, A, B flat, C, D, E, and F. Okay, then the second step is to lower scale degrees 3, 6, and 7. So what's a scale degree? A scale degree is just another name for one of the notes of the scale. Okay, so we tend to number our notes of the scale. So I'll scroll back up here to the major scale for a second. So we call the first note of the scale scale degree 1. Okay, and we put a little hat over the number to indicate scale degree. So this little hat, which is also called a caret. So this little hat, also called a caret, indicates scale degree. So there's scale degree 1, scale degree 2, scale degree 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 1 again. Okay, for the minor scale, here's scale degree 1, here's scale degree 2. I'm going to skip 3 for a second. Here's 4, 5. I'm going to skip 6 and 7 again for a second, and there's 1 again. So I'm saying we want to lower scale degrees 3, 6, and 7. The way I'll indicate that is with an arrow, a downward pointing arrow. So we want to use lower scale degree 3, lower scale degree 6, and lowered scale degree 7. Okay. So in my F major scale that I've got written on this staff so far, I've got an A, and I need to lower that. Okay, so that's going to become A flat. Then for scale degree 6, I've got a D, and I need to lower that, so that's going to become D flat. And then for scale degree 7, I need to lower that one as well, and that's going to become E flat. and there's my minor scale. So we started with the major scale, okay? Then we lowered scale degrees 3, 6, and 7, and that's how we got our minor scale. Okay, if you're curious about the pattern of intervals, we can take a look at that, just like we did with the major scale. So F to, oops, sorry about that. So F to G is a whole step, okay? G to A flat is a half step. A flat to B flat is a whole step. B flat to C is a whole step. C to D flat is a half step. D flat to E flat is a whole step. And E flat to F is a whole step. Okay, so our pattern is whole, half, whole, whole, half, whole, whole. Okay, but again, the best way to do it is to start with the major scale. That way you only have to remember one pattern of intervals, right? And then just lower scale degrees 3, 6, and 7. Okay, so there's constructing major and minor scales. So now that we know how to construct these scales, let's just hear them. So here's the F major scale. Okay, and here's the F minor scale. Okay, so one more time, F major. And F minor.